Hey everybody, this is the Georgia Show. The Dogs are 2-0 and they're staying hot with the new commitment from Chris Cole. We'll break that down and try to figure out who exactly this Georgia team is as they open up SEC play this week against the Gamecocks. It's all coming up right now on the Georgia Show.
Better never rests.
Counting careless in the sky. What a thrilling time to be alive.
It's time once again for a Sunday night edition of the Georgia Show. I'm Wes Blankenship, Jake Rowe, Jeremy Johnson, Rusty Menzel, all on as we start off with the biggest news of the day. Chris Cole keeps things hot on the recruiting trail for the Dogs, that four-star linebacker. It's been a while since we've done one of these, but let's break down the Dogs' latest commitment in this class.
Jeremy, I'll let you go first, man.
Yeah, he's a really good linebacker. He's another one of these athletic guys that I believe he plays safety a little bit in his first couple of years. So he's got a lot of speed, big, long, rangy guy. The first time I saw him, I thought he was a receiver or a tight end or something. And somebody said, hey, that's a linebacker. So, he's one of these guys that, his best football, could be in 2 or 3 years. I think it's a big get for Georgia. So that's a, good opportunity, to continue to add some depth there. I know they got 3 guys last year. So he's definitely a guy that that'll look a lot like, Quay Walker and, the Channing Tindalls of the world.
Got to have those 3 down backers now. You can't get caught in the substitution issue where somebody can't cover in space because you'll get 8 up. And this is a guy that can play 3 downs for you. As Jeremy said, very athletic. I think he's one of the fastest 55-meter hurdlers in America. So that tells you when you can pick your hips up and put them down that quick, you're athletic. To be able to run and do those hurdles is a really key indicator. You don't see that much anymore, especially at a linebackers running the hurdles. So you look at him and you think this is a guy that can play. If you're going to play linebacker for Glenn Schumann, I think we don't even have to look at tape anymore. We know you can run because you just have to be able to run. You can't be labeled as a thumper anymore because if you're labeled as a thumper, Georgia's not the place for you. You got to have physicality, but you've got to be able to cover, and these teams spread you out so much. And I go back, we all kind of think about a play or two, but I think about Florida a couple of years ago when they spread Nakobe Dean out one-on-one and thought they had a mismatch, and they throw a ball there and he picked 6 to the end zone. So teams are going to spread you out. They can put you in one-on-one situations. They can ISO you. So I think this is another guy that fits a mold. And kudos to Georgia holding off USC at the end, and also a Tennessee visit again, back-to-back Tennessee visits, but in the end, picks Georgia tonight.
When you look at his junior film too, one thing that stood out to me first over anything was he's lining up out there over the slot. They're putting him out there like way out there in space. He's picking passes off. That matchup stuff's unreal, man. Just the ability to run with a tight end or run with a running back. It's pretty incredible. It wouldn't shock me to see him do some of the stuff that they had Leonard Floyd, Lorenzo Carter, Walter Grant, Darius Smith do. And that's, kind of play that hybrid Sam linebacker star position, some of these heavy frontsmen. You're seeing more 12 personnel now, right? You're seeing some teams kind of gravitate towards maybe going with 2 tight ends, even if they're athletic tight ends. Well, if you want to match up with a team like that and do some run game stuff, then Chris Cole is a weapon for you.
Yeah, we got his huddle film up here right now, and you don't want to be known as just a thumper, but he can do that for sure. That speed is pretty intense. Appreciate y'all tuning in tonight, and want to invite you to hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. It'll give you access to comment and ask us some questions about Chris, about the team as the show goes on. It's been a great summer, great fall getting started with this coverage of the 2-time defending national champs. But come on in, hit like and subscribe, and mix it up with us. We'll see what we got. I love watching this dude's tape. And like I said, starting the show, it's been a while since we've gotten to break some of this stuff down. So we've been consumed with the team, rightfully so. But it's a nice breath of fresh air to remind everybody out there that Georgia's still, and Glenn Schumann's still getting it done on the trail with all these top-notch linebackers.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all would agree, especially Jeremy and I, about how well Glenn Schumann. Obviously the Philadelphia Eagles came after him, and recruiting didn't mean a damn thing to them, but X and O's was a key part of why the Philadelphia Eagles came after pretty aggressively to sign Glenn Schumann and get him away from Georgia. He stays, but I don't think people kind of continue to grasp how much of an alpha recruiter he is, and he doesn't miss much. And at times when he does miss, it's because of the class in front of him. He did so well. People don't want to follow that up. So I think it says a lot about these particular guys he has in this class, Justin Williams, Chris Jones, and now Chris Cole, to follow, Troy Bowles, C.J. Allen, and Raylan Wilson. So he signed 6. He's going to sign 6 in 2 classes. And I think it says a lot about Georgia. He's already in on Zayden Walker, who I think is going to play inside linebacker, who is one of the most I don't know how much tape you watch if you're joining us, but go watch Zayden Walker's clips. And you want to talk about, I don't like to throw the word freak around, but I don't know how else to describe that guy. He's already number 1 linebacker in the state of Georgia for next year. So they're on him hard as well. You kind of like Georgia's chances early on right there. So Glenn Schumann not only is an X and O guy, he's an alpha recruiter, and I think that's why he's making in the neighborhood of $2 million a year.
Yeah, one of the cool things that I've noticed too is that these guys, when they talk about him, they talk about him having a good relationship and all that, and that's important. I think it's just cool to see the types of guys that they're attracting as people. Just Justin Williams and Chris Jones, and even this kid Chris Cole is kind of they're all about. I want somebody that's going to push me. I want someone that's going to make me better as a football player, because they have the vision that, hey, we're not complete players yet, and we have an opportunity to go to Georgia. And, this guy is, we'll sprinkle in and play a little bit, but, over the 3-4 years, you become a better football player. And I think that's something that, when you talk about a guy being coveted by the next level, that's something that translates. If you can develop talent and improve it over a certain period of time, that translates. Obviously you don't have to recruit and who.
Yeah, and one thing too, Jeremy, you're touching on there, a great point to the next level. Channing Tindall didn't start at Georgia; he was a 3rd rounder. Clay Walker started 1 year, and he was a 1st rounder. So I think there's a lot to say. Hey, you now just come here and let me coach you up and get you ready for that next level. And here are the players. I mean, Tate Crowder's still playing, which is crazy. So I think that that's the value. And Jeremy, I think you hit it right on the head. And it takes a certain fit. And I think Glenn Schumann, in particular, in his room, has done a great job of finding guys that fit his culture, his room. And it takes a certain type of player to walk in there, because if you were to take a picture right now of that room and those guys right now, if Glenn Schumann got everybody together and took a picture, and we go back and look at it 4 years from now, and Jake and Wes, I think you would agree, there's a lot of dudes just going to play Sunday in that room. So it takes a special dude to walk in there and say, you know what, not only do I want to come to Georgia, I want to come in there knowing that I may not be playing right now, but I'm playing the long game. And the long game is Glenn Schumann has a track record. Glenn Schumann has proven results. And Glenn Schumann doesn't have to BS people. He just got to say, hey, here it is, and here's what my guys are doing.
Yeah.
Bro, you're on mute.
Yeah. All right. Papaw's got the internet again.
It's never sounded better, as they told me on TV the other night. The channel was muted.
That's right. I got a voice for miming. Hey, y'all talked about the 3 guys they got in last year's class, and obviously those, all 3 absolute dudes. CJ Allen's already playing. Raylan Wilson would have been if he wasn't, hadn't gotten hurt already. But with those 3, with that as the backdrop, not only has he got these 3 guys committed in this class, but he had Georgia in the thick of it for Sammy Brown, DeMarcus Riddick, and Joseph Phillips. And then when the in-state kid in your backyard and the 2 from the state next to you didn't didn't decide they wanted to be at Georgia. They decided, hey, we're going to do something else. He just went and got the number 1 from Texas and the number 5 from Virginia, and I believe the number 7 linebacker in the country from Virginia. So it's just wild. It is absolutely wild the way he can do it, and it's just rare. You just don't see guys that recruit it like that. You got to love it. You got to love what you do to recruit at that kind of level, and Glenn Schumann does.
So to your point about getting guys that come in knowing that they may not play right away, when you talk about the backdrop of the transfer portal era that everybody's in, look, we got a small sample size. We've seen Colorado make it work thus far this season. Ole Miss looked pretty good playing at Tulane, but that score, maybe a little bit closer than the final score looked like. But I think it's kind of an insurance policy for Georgia to bring guys in that come in believing and knowing, hey, this is a long game for me. And that gives Georgia, in an ideal world, a little bit better picture of what they're working with roster management-wise and not trying to piece together an entire roster based off of guys that go to the portal. They've got an idea. All right, this is what we're going to battle with here.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, that's why you see them be so aggressive, going after 3 guys that all 3 can play inside the linebacker. You never know what happens. I know Tresman Marshall ends up in Alabama after being at Georgia for 3 years and playing sparingly, and he's a starter for Alabama. So, Raylan Wilson, Troy Bowles, CJ Allen, all will see the field. Justin Williams and Chris Jones and Chris Cole, they're likely to all eventually play at some point. But what happens if one of those guys passes one of those guys, and you have a situation like where Tresman goes to Alabama, and Georgia hadn't really needed many guys to fill that spot because they got 3 guys they play regularly, and then you got CJ Allen now sprinkling in there. So that's what they like to do, is have all this depth. And like you said, that's definitely a point of power for them to be able to have a bunch of depth all throughout their roster. It's not just the linebacker core, it's defensive line, wide receiver, running back, even quarterback to an extent.
Before we wrap up with the recruiting notes on this show, Neighbor in the comments wants to know, and he asks Rusty, but Jeremy, feel free to weigh in. Bro, if you got any intel here, is Georgia going to flip Cam Davis from Florida State?
No, Georgia's full at running back for this class, and I know they recruited Cam Davis a little while early on, but he's set on Florida State, and he took a couple of visits to Georgia. But Georgia with their guys, with Nate Frazier and Dwight Phillips and Chauncey from down in Florida, they are done. And by the way, I saw a neighbor ask how to flip to our site, so that might be the best post of the night. So we'd love to have you and get in while you can, man, and enjoy it.
DawgsHQ.com. That's where you can find all of Jeremy's intel from the past few days and all of
the intel that Jeremy our team has.
What's up, Rusty?
Can I ask Jeremy one question before he steps out? Jeremy, you went down to Colquitt, Moultrie, Georgia the other night and got a chance to see Nye Carr, wide receiver, in person. What was your thoughts? And is he a game changer? Is he a alpha receiver? Is he a Miko Hardman type? What's the comparison you think in person you saw out of him?
I when you walk out there and look at him, you don't think, oh my God, this guy's going to take the top off of a defense. But just watching him play, he's just so smooth. He's explosive, changes directions. Like, he's really smooth when he changes directions. And he's not afraid to go up and get the football either. A guy 5'10", right at 6 foot ish, isn't afraid to attack the football. So I don't know if Georgia's had a guy like this recently that isn't necessarily a big body receiver. I'm almost inclined to compare him to A.D. Mitchell a little bit. I believe he can play outside, and I think he can play inside. And he's a guy that you can run on jet sweeps and throw, little bubbles to, and he can go 80 yards because, he has that kind of speed. And one thing I really like about him is that he's tough. He's a tough guy to be, 170, 175 pounds. He ain't scared of nobody. So he's definitely one of these guys that, you're going to look up in 3 or 4 years that has done a lot of really good things in Athens just because of the way he approaches stuff.
I tell you, I don't want to, I'm not trying to extend this out a little bit, but the guy that keeps coming to mind for me, and I think he's a tad bit smaller, but he's a lot faster, is Terry Godwin.
That's a good comparison.
Because of that kind of Terry was never a big receiver, but he'd go get it in the air, and he had big hands and he had great hands, and he would do things like that. Like he played a little bigger than he was. Terry played like a big receiver at times, and I think that's one of the things. But I think Nye Carr is, you're talking about a similar quickness, but Terry didn't have an extra gear, even though he ran a 4.5 something at the combine. It wasn't slow by any means. I do think that Nye maybe just a tad bit faster, maybe has that extra gear. But just in terms of like the crazy catches, the one-handed stuff, like you said, the way he attacks the football as a smaller receiver, that's kind of something he reminds me of. And before Jeremy gets off here too, another thing, don't let the cat out of the bag. But what you got coming tomorrow? Because obviously there's some movement here with Georgia and another 5-star prospect. That we're talking about. You got some stuff coming tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a big confirmed 5-star coming to Athens this weekend for this game against South Carolina. It's a big guy, big time target, and definitely think Georgia has an opportunity to either make up some ground or be really involved here throughout this recruitment. I'll definitely touch on it a little bit more tomorrow.
All right, that's what we like to call a tease. Jeremy Johnson, where can people find you, man?
Twitter, Jeremy_Johnson. Actually, I don't have it memorized. Jeremy _O Johnson on Twitter or X or whatever it's called now. So you can
nobody knows.
Check me out here on DawgsHQ all the time.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, appreciate you stopping by. We'll catch more of you over at DawgsHQ.com. Peace.
All right. Thank y'all for having me.
Appreciate it, Jeremy.
All right. Great stuff from Jeremy there. All over the place. He made it to Buc-ee's. I should have asked him about that. I think it was his first visit, and we know that can be a spiritual experience. Speaking of spiritual experiences, watching Georgia football improve from week 1 to week 2. A little bit of groaning in the first quarter. Rusty, I see your name tonight is "It is Mike Bobo's fault." A little tongue-in-cheek, but I think 2 games in, we kind of have an idea of what this Georgia team is made out of, but you really won't know until South Carolina. But what we do know so far is Carson Beck's getting better. I don't know if he's making everybody feel happy about him because everyone's going to be very critical of the new quarterback replacing Stetson Bennett. But we do know this defense is pretty dang good.
Yeah, I'll start with the good stuff. The defense is they're fast, they're big, they're what we thought they were. I just kind of made a note on the board Friday or Saturday morning, I believe, that they're different with Smile Munden on the field because he adds so much speed there in the middle. He can play sideline to sideline, he can blitz the passer, all those things you kind of love out of Smile, and they're just different with him. I thought Warren Brinson played really good. I thought Warren Brinson played one of his best games. Kristen Miller, until he got hurt a little bit. I'll have to ask Jake Rowe about that. But Kristen had a really good couple of plays there. So you see some things out of that young defensive line that you like. You got some new names there, some guys that's got to step up at some point. And you look at the offense, and I think they did start slow. And that first drive, they go right down the field and unable to punch that in, and they miss a chip shot field goal. And you're just thinking, oh man, here we go. But real strong second half. I'll get more into the offense, but I want to hear Jake's comments. But I've certainly got a few more comments as we get into the other side of my thoughts on this team right now.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of hand-wringing, and obviously the 3 biggest topics of conversation are Mike Bobo, Carson Beck, and the run game. All right, and all I can do is just kind of just make a comparison to Georgia as the championship program that it is, right? They're back-to-back champions this year. They were champions last year. Well, what did we see out of last year's team? And I don't know what's going to be different when they're challenged. Okay, so let's just go ahead and put that in there. But for those that are worried, I've made this point several times, but we saw how Georgia played against Kent State, against Samford last year, even against Missouri. So I think what you kind of have to look at here is, all right, let's start with Mike Bobo. I've gone back and I've looked at the passing charts from the past 2 seasons from the first couple of games, and they are so comparable in terms of where the passes are being made. A lot of at and behind the line of scrimmage stuff, a lot of under 10-yard stuff. Get it to you guys and let them move. Taking your shots, down the field. Thus far, Carson Beck has been better. And listen, he hasn't played Oregon, but but he's better through 2 games from 10 yards and beyond than Stetson Bennett was last year. He is more efficient. He is more successful. He's thrown for he hasn't thrown for more yards. Well, yes, actually he has. He has thrown for more yards, 10 yards and beyond. Now, has he missed some stuff? Absolutely. But you keep going back to this whole idea that a lot of folks want to just throw this, hey, he's in his 4th year at Georgia, Carson Beck is. Well, I mean, 2020 wasn't much of a year, guys. There was basically no camp. He had no spring practice, and he got in to snap and kneel on it maybe once or twice. 2021, he ends up being the 3rd quarterback, right? So, probably got a lot of scout team reps that year, if we're being honest, him and Brock Vandegrift both. So yeah, he's a little older, but starting games and having teams game plan against you and having teams put stuff in to say, hey, maybe we can confuse him. Maybe we can take what he did this last game really well and we can, go against that's going to take some time. And then, obviously the run game, again, going back to last year, I looked back at my notes after the Samford game, even after the South Carolina game and after the Kent State game. And it was and Missouri game as well, especially for 3 quarters. A lot of concern about the run game. Like, where's it at? You're not doing this. It's a combination of things, guys. The offensive line's not blocking real well. The perimeter blocking's not great. None of it's consistent. None of it's, awesome. But then again, you look at the tailbacks. Are they getting what's there? Are they turning, there are some times where Georgia's turning 5-6 yards into 2 or 3 yards because they're still coming together. And the left side of that offensive line, I think, cannot be overstated enough that Ernest Green is playing his first ball of his career. And he played pretty poorly yesterday. He missed got Carson Beck lit up on a touchdown pass in the red zone and was responsible for a couple of other pressures and a couple of other blown assignments in the run game. So I tell you what I do know about Georgia football, Rusty, is that you and I talked about it on the phone yesterday. Kirby Smart was fit to be tied for that noon kickoff yesterday. He was in rare form, and that's why Georgia is where Georgia is, and that's why Kirby Smart's considered one of the best coaches in the country, is because he's crossing every T and he's dotting every I. And I don't think it's bootlicking or wild to suggest that Georgia's going to get better as this season goes along. The entire program is founded upon improvement and development. And I think you're in good hands, and I think Georgia's going to grow because these coaches know how to coach and these players are talented.
Yeah, I'm concerned, man. I'm concerned about the running game. And you got leading rusher with Roddy Robinson, 6 carries for 38 yards. You had 99 total rushing yards against Ball State. And I'm not so concerned. I do think what you're touching on, Jake, I do think you're 100% right. I think the offensive line is going to get better. I think they played a little bit better there at times against Ball State. Not really worried about that group. What I'm worried about is, do they have difference makers at running back right now? And I'll be honest with you, I don't see it. And let me give you an example of what I think without talking to anybody in that building about it. Georgia's running quick game. I mean, they are running quick game as fast as they can get. They're getting the ball out of Beck's hands into space, and they're basically using those bubbles for a handoff. And they're just trying to get the ball out to those guys in space. And it takes so long for plays to develop. It takes so long for me to see the guys getting through the hole. I think the reaction from me, from both of y'all and everyone else, when you saw Dillon Bell, I'm not saying Dillon Bell is the answer at running back, but what I'm telling you is when you watch that play, you see how fast he was in the hole. A guy was one-on-one with him. He makes a move on him. He takes to the house. And that's not going to happen every play. That's not going to happen. But what you see is the burst. And right now, I just don't see it. I see guys that are kind of hard to tackle. Roger Robinson, to me right now, might be your best. Now, listen, we haven't seen this Dejan Edwards yet, and we all know that he's a different kind of dude. He's got a little juice to him as well. So you welcome him back. We felt like Branson Robinson was the number one running back. I thought he was, and he's gone for the year. But when I see Georgia going to quick game, I can tell you right now, that's a lot of what they ran at Colorado State with Mike Bobo because they didn't have much of a running game. And you're doing what you have with your personnel. And, you know, that the running backs have got to, that room has got to get better in a hurry. And if Georgia's got bigger goals down the line, that's the one thing I can tell you, in my opinion, is not calling, it's not play calling, is not scheme. It's sometimes there's one unblocked person and you're counting on that back to make that person miss. And they're not making people miss many tackles right now. And I just, I'm sure that Kirby Smart and those guys know that, and they're going to challenge those backs, and they're all highly recruited players now. This isn't like Georgia just went out on a limb with these guys. These are highly recruited players they've got. So, Jake, I think you hit it right on the head. These are great coaches. And you know what? You get paid a lot of money. So your best players right now are on the outside, on the edge, and you got to find a way to make those guys win games. And, oh, by the way, Lab McConkey still hasn't played. I don't know. Jake, you and I both hear things every day with that deal. And for whatever reason, he hasn't played yet. So that kind of is a little bit worrisome. But when Lab McConkey gets back in this lineup, he is a guy that can stress you as a defense too, because he's so quick and he's so fast in short area. I can't wait to see him in this offense because Mike Bobo is going to give Lad McConkey a ton of touches, and he's going to get a lot of those. And listen, Makai Muse, you got to find packages for him because he's making things. To my example, when we talk about explosive and making people miss, watch how many people miss tackles or he runs by them. And that's the thing right now, Georgia, I think, is lacking in the running back room. I know everybody wants to jump to Dylan Bell. Let's throw him back there. I think that Dylan Bell run showed you what we're used to at Georgia. And right now, I just don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like what we said coming into the season. Is there going to be a stable of guys that are confident with what they're doing, whether it's because of experience, because of their health? And right now, I mean, who's to say that's not lending itself to this situation at the running back position? Once again, though, Makai Muse proving that Georgia is walk-on you. I mean, sub 6 foot players are the cornerstone of Georgia's football dynasty right now. That guy is a maniac. Ro, what were you about to say?
He's sub 5.5 feet.
Yeah, he is.
I think Makai Muse might be 5'5", man. One thing I do want to point out too is, Rusty, you brought it up, Dejan Edwards returning. I don't care who I don't care who was going to be available, even if Branson Robinson was available, who I think was Georgia's most talented back. Even Kenny McIntosh. If you go back to last year, there's nobody on Georgia's roster better at being productive in the ground game than Day. He rarely gets tackled for a loss. He's always kind of finding the crease, and I feel like he's the guy that when the offensive line has it blocked for 2 or 3, he picks up 5 or 6. And when they've got it blocked for 6 or 7, he's the guy that can get you 12 to 15. Now, is he going to go just running by everybody in the secondary? Nah, he does. You talk about not having that extra gear. He's probably a 4.7, 4.8 guy. But we know Elijah Holyfield was that and saw him run for 1,000 yards. One of the things that Rusty that I do have to say about the run game though is, if you'd have told me back in March, hey, to start the season, Georgia's going to have probably it's not going to have any of its best 3 tailbacks healthy 100%, and then 2 of them aren't going to play at all for the first 2 games. I'd have probably told you the run game was probably going to look a little shoddy. But losing Branson Robinson sucks, and you made the point on the day it happened, and then it kind of was a light bulb moment for me too. You just lost your most talented running back for the year. And that's just going to suck. And now you got to figure it out. You got to put Brock Bowers back there and throw him a screen, which was set up for a big play had Brock Bowers not done what he never does and drop passes.
Yep.
So you got Dylan Bell back there. You may see Makai Muse line up back there at some point. Andrew Paul at some point, Rusty, we heard the same things on him.
That's the one I'm interested in, Andrew
Yeah,
Paul.
me too.
He looks to me like he's got a little bit more juice. And I think back today, I'm thinking, okay, why would you not play him as much? And the only thing, Jake, you know more X and O's than me. You know you got to be able to protect the quarterback. And if you're not available, if you can't pick up that part yet, it takes a little more time to get in there. People aren't realizing this is really his first fall on the field. So, and he's also in a new offense with Mike Bobo. And one thing I can tell you, if you can't pass pro, you're not playing right now because you got to protect the quarterback and some of those things. So maybe, and that's just a hunch, maybe, but I'm interested in seeing Andrew Paul because I think he's got a little bit more juice to him just seeing him with the ball.
Well, I think Kirby said in fall camp, right, or even when he got hurt, maybe it was in the spring, I can't remember, that with his injury, you're still looking at him partially recovering, so maybe he's on some sort of pitch count as well.
Could be.
But I guess the good news there is everything we just said, with Dejan coming back, guys getting healthier, you're kind of on this boat ramp down into the water. Each week gets a little bit easier, and maybe the running backs put it together and start to be a little bit more violent out there as the season goes on. What have we heard on Javon Bullard and Kristen Miller?
That's being real picky. Let me finish that subject. That's being real picky on Georgia. But I know the standards here, and I know what they've had at running back and those type of things. A lot of people on the board, a lot of people in the comments saying Dylan Bell. I can assure you, they're going to have some packages for Dylan Bell. He's just different back there. He's 200 pounds, 205 pounds. So, yes, I don't think that was a one and done by any means, but they're not going to sit here back there and have him run the ball 25 times. That's not going to happen either. But Dylan Bell makes you better. If he touches it 5 to 6 to 7 times in the backfield, I can only imagine they showed that play. And you don't think South Carolina's putting in extra work for Dylan Bell this week? It causes you extra stress to prepare for a team.
Well, hey, I want to point something out real quick because it just kind of hit me in the head when I was thinking about it. You know what Kenny McIntosh did in Georgia's first 3 ball games? Well, we can count the first 4 ball games last year. If I'm doing the math correctly, Kenny McIntosh had a grand total. He finished the season with 825 rushing yards. But after 4 games last year, I'm looking at this right now, and I'm seeing 97 yards rushing on about 26 carries. So, 25 carries. So 25 carries for 97 yards rushing in Georgia's first 3 games last year. It took a little while for that thing to get, you look at a couple of those games, Brock Bowers was the leading rusher in one of them because he broke off a 75-yard run. I think Georgia's going to figure it out. I do think they're going to figure it out. And I think Dejan Edwards is kind of like, he's kind of a massive puzzle piece to this whole thing because, again, first and second down, being productive, that's something where Georgia's struggling right now. They're running the ball terribly on second down.
They're missing Darnell Washington.
Yeah, they're missing him too, for sure. The guy that's out there pancaking Joey Bosa or Nick Bosa today. So
there's not a Darnell Washington in the building.
No.
And there's not a 6'7", 280-pound. Oh, by the way, that's an offensive tackle that's running routes. So
yeah,
you're missing that dude, man. That's something that's not talked about enough.
We're going to get to more of that in a moment. Jake, do you have an update on Javon Bullard and or Kristen Miller?
As far as what I've heard on Kristen Miller, I think there's a good chance he's good to go. I'm not optimistic about Javon Bullard, not this week. I haven't heard anything about it being a high ankle sprain, but I think he sprained it pretty good. It's a good thing that he was down there standing outside of the offensive or defensive huddle talking to Ron Corson, after it happened. But he's going to have to respond extremely well to treatment before he's ready to come back for South Carolina. And I think that's a little bit of a long shot. But as of right now, I think Kristen Miller's going to be okay.
All right. Decent update there. We'll see on Bullard. If you have not gotten your tickets yet to South Carolina at Georgia, it's the SEC opener. What are you doing? Well, if you're scrounging and looking around and you haven't had much luck, head on over to gametime.co. We've partnered with them all season long to help y'all get a great discount when you sign up and get their app. So the deal is you go to gametime.co, use the checkout code DAWGS, spelled the way that y'all know it's supposed to be spelled, DAWGS. you will get $20 off of your first ticket order. So just going around the stadium here, we got some down in the lower level, around $200. That's yours for around $180 with the checkout code DAWGS. Looking on the 50, trying to splurge a little bit, you got a hot date, $273. That's about $250 with the checkout code DAWGS. So try out GameTime.co. You're going to want to download the Game Time app, create your account, use that code DAWGS for $20 off your first purchase. The terms apply on each order. Create your account, redeem the code DAWGS for $20 off. We're inviting y'all to download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, so let's dive in and dig in a little bit deeper on this Georgia rushing attack. I know we just spent a lot of time on the personnel in the backfield, but Kirby, look, he did kind of bristle a little bit when he was asked about Georgia's rushing attack during the game in his post-game presser. And he spent a few moments explaining that it's not just handing the ball off for Georgia's rushing attack. It is those bubble screens. It's the plays on the perimeter. It's the RPO. And they view that as rushing yards. And that's valid. I mean, he said that last year. It's true. It's the way you look at the ball game these days. But I do still hear fans' frustration about the physicality, the point of attack, whether it's blocking on the line of scrimmage or some of the whiffs on the perimeter. So where do y'all land on this? Is it, totally siding with Kirby that this is just going to be Georgia's running game, or do you look at this O-line? You do look at the guys on the perimeter and the absence of Darnell Washington as this kind of coming together for a pretty not so tasty cake of ingredients that Georgia's working with, blocking specifically.
I'll answer real quick, and I'll give Jake Rowe this thought because he's our X and O guy. And we can sit here and say we don't have Darnell Washington because they don't. And that's a big deal, and that's a unicorn. That is a absolute 100% unicorn in college football. You have to go back to probably Mercedes Lewis, and God knows what year that was, to even have somebody that big, that athletic, and that physical. He's gone. You don't have that. Now, Jake, you also know that basically your second, maybe your third team tight end is out right now in Lawson Lucky. You're playing with two tight ends, and you're playing Oscar Delp and Brock Bowers right now, and you're having to throw an extra lineman in there. I believe they threw Chad Lindbergh, number 85, on at one point yesterday, if I'm correct. Mm-hmm. Just trying to get some extra bodies in there. How much 12 personnel and how physical can you be? Because you cannot lose a tight end right now. With Lawson Lucky out. Pierce Spurlin is not an inline attacks type tight end right now. They're dangerously thin at tight end, and I wonder, if you start talking about 12 personnel and getting downhill and getting physical with those kids, how much is that affecting play calling? Because you can't lose one of those guys right now.
Yeah, and it's tough too, Rusty, because, you noticed it yesterday. They would go not 13 personnel. They go 11 personnel. And, they would line up in a formation that you would see them line up in with the tight ends, where the tight ends are set back like wings and the split ends are on that line of scrimmage. But they would put Dominic Lovett in that slot position, or they would have another receiver in that slot position. Well, when you do that, that other team knows for a fact you are not going to press a run to that side. You're running away from that 100% if you put that guy on the wing. So you're not only are you kind of fooling with your personnel there, but you're also messing with your formations. There are some formations that you may like to run the ball out of that you can't even run because you don't have the right personnel. And I think, Rusty, that is a very underrated point right there with the lack of 12 personnel. Not only do you not want to lose them, but you can't go out there running a bunch of 12 personnel with both of those tight ends on the field, because one of them's got to be, because you want Brock Bowers to be on the field in 11 personnel. Yep. You want Brock Bowers to be on the field in packages that are specifically designed for him too. So, you're really, when you get Oscar Delp on the field, you want it as often as you can to be spelling Brock Bowers and letting him get a rest, because you don't want to. That's one of the reasons folks are talking about, well, he wasn't targeted a bunch. He played 34 snaps yesterday, and that's kind of low for him. And I think that's by design, because they know the stretch run is coming. And I think getting Lawson Lucky back up to speed will help. I think you're probably looking at a couple, 2 or 3 weeks before he's back up to speed and ready to play. But I think that's definitely, a factor there. And I also just think you've just got to execute and block better. Like there was a play yesterday, I want to say it was a 3rd down play where they threw it out to Dominic Lovett in motion on a little quick screen. And it wasn't that Arian Smith couldn't get the block. It's just Arian Smith didn't block the right guy. You see the guy, they've got man coverage. He's following Dominic Lovett across the formation. That's exactly why you do those types of motions to identify who's on who. And Arian Smith kind of moves upfield to hold his defender to make sure his guy stays home, and then doesn't realize who he needs to block until way too late. It was an eye discipline issue on offense, which you don't see a whole lot. Those are the things that the kinks that Georgia has to get worked out, and there's a lot of them. And that's, listen, it's you're depending on some guys to do some things right now with Ladd McConkey out, missing Marcus Rosemy-Jackson in that first game, even Dejon Edwards. You're relying on some guys to do some things that they may not quite be ready to do at the highest level yet, but you've got to get them there. You can't give up on them and say, no, Arian Smith's never going to block for us. So, that's just it. They got to get him ready. They got to get him blocking. And I think they're doing a pretty good job of kind of forcing the issue of making sure these guys see it on tape and understand this is why you've got to get better at this. And I think the staff's going to do a good job with that.
Yeah, I believe that. I'm looking forward to this SEC opener. We don't really know what this team is truly capable of, and I want to see Carson Beck take that next step, and I think that he will. These big games, as you've pointed out, Jake, you go back and look at some of these duds last year where there just wasn't, a little bit of motivation from start to finish. It was different from the 2021 team. They dominated pretty much everybody, but they did have these step-up moments when they needed to. And when they needed to, boy, did they. They did it. So I expect to see that similar approach and similar mentality as Georgia opens up with South Carolina. It's going to be a fun atmosphere, 3:30 kick between the hedges. All right, let's get to some dog stocks, wrap this thing up. I'll start us off. I'm going to say stock up on the apocalypse. Y'all talked about it earlier. Brock Bowers dropped a pass, man. I didn't think I'd ever see it. The end times are here. That was a pretty tough moment for Brock Bowers. But in all seriousness, he's gonna go off against the Gamecocks. I can't wait to watch it because he knows what to do against South Carolina. He had his way with them last year, and I still don't think if Georgia doesn't want you to have an answer for him, you're probably not going to have an answer for him. And I'm excited to see how he bounces back from that one drop. A little bit of a quiet day from Brock Bowers, but the rest of the guys got it done. So stock up on Revelation.
I'm gonna go stock up and just continue to go stock up on Mekhi Muse, because here's the thing about him that I think is just incredibly impressive is I went back and I watched, rewatched the game and everything. And, he's tiny, man. Like I saw him in person the other day without shoulder pads on. And I am telling you right now, I mean, he is almost a little person. All right. He is not far from it. But the way he comes up with stuff and the way he kind of gives this team a jolt, honestly, like I don't care if he ends up with, 1,500 all-purpose yards or whatever. None of that matters to me, because I think that his value to this team on special teams, from an energy standpoint, from catching a 2-yard pass and playing up under the tackle and getting 6. I think as the year goes on, he's going to be a guy that has a massive impact on this team just from a intangible standpoint. And not only that, just the humility, coming up and talking to us, the, kind of soft spoken. I mean, he's got every reason to kind of have a little small man syndrome there and just, be, loud and boisterous and wild, maybe a little bit of the Isaiah McKenzie type, personality. And by the way, Isaiah McKenzie's much bigger, maybe the only person he's ever played ball with that he's much bigger than. But man, he's something else, and I think he's going to mean a lot to this football team as the season goes on.
Yeah, I saw him downtown. I think it was over the summer around dinner time, and I recognized him. I said, "What's up, man?" And he like looked surprised that anyone even recognized who he was. And I think he's going to be a lot more recognizable over the next several weeks. All right, Rusty, what you got?
I got stock up on the couple of Georgia players that I feel like need to step up, and they did. Warren Brinson is a guy that I think Georgia fans are happy to see a big defensive lineman make a play. And I'll say this name, the play yesterday, he got gifted one, but I noticed little things about players. And Chaz Chambliss got gifted a wide interception. I mean, it hit the odds of hitting a guy in the calf and then you catching it in reverse is one of those gifts from above. I can assure you that. But when you see the reaction, not of Chaz Chambliss putting on the shoulder pads, if you go back and watch the game, watch the reaction of all the players. Watch Michael Williams. Watch Warren Brinson. Watch Smile Munden. Watch Malachi Starks. Watch all of those guys, their reaction to Chaz Chambliss getting a big moment. And that tells you, if you've ever been in a locker room, that'll tell you all you know about that young man is they like him, they love him, they respect him, and they were truly happy that he had his moment and he got a play yesterday. So stock up to that young man and, his teammates for celebrating with him like that.
They kept replaying it in slow-mo, and it made it look easy. But the way it bounced off that guy's foot, that was not an easy grab.
It looked like it caught him, like I told you post-game. That ball kind of caught him a little bit. And, Rusty, I noticed that exact same thing. And, listen, I ain't calling any names. Folks can figure the name out. But there was a guy who played that exact same position not too long ago. And when he did something that well, it was noticeable that teammates did not react quite that way whenever he did something nice. So, yes, you're 100% on that. I noticed it as well. They went bananas.
Like when Chris Smith would do that, he'd make a play, and everybody would be over there. Like Chris Smith couldn't celebrate fast enough because they'd be celebrating for him, and those type of players just carry a certain weight around them, and those type of players, Chaz Chambliss and Chris Smith, have earned the respect of their teammates, and you saw that yesterday.
Kai Muse, I mean, you need the guys on these teams that aren't just the 5-star world beaters, because they do bring the team together and remind everybody that there are people out there that aren't from Mars playing in the SEC, and they can lead the team too. Really quick, guys, I asked it in the comments. Is Bama done? Is Texas back? Both or neither?
To be determined.
Yeah, I think Texas, I tried not to overreact, but I started thinking about what's beat Georgia and what's beat Georgia 3 times since 2020. And we talked about it before, but it takes an alpha quarterback and it takes an alpha group of wide receivers. And you just kind of look at Texas and go, maybe they fit that box. If Georgia were to play them, do they stress you the most? Because Quinn Ewers played really good yesterday. If he didn't have some drops, that game's not that close in the end. But he had some key drops, but credit them. And I think Alabama, I think they can win the rest of their games. Can they win the national championship? I'm not sure there. I'm going to have to see. They're going to have to be able to dial up some stuff for Milroe because, I picked Texas, and the reason I picked Texas on the radio the other day was because I didn't trust him. I hadn't seen enough out of him yet, and he can do those against Middle Tennessee State, and I think he can do it up to a lot of teams in SEC, but to really, really good defense, I'm going to have to see him be able to make those tight window throws, go through progressions, and not decisions like he made last night. It's early, but I'm telling you, Alabama has a chance to be all the way back to the end. Don't count them out just yet.
Yeah, don't.
Three things that worry me is line of scrimmage play on offense, line of scrimmage play on defense, and we're still dealing with 90 yards worth of penalties. And I'm kind of blown away at those 3 things because let me tell you something, man. Nick Saban 2008, Nick Saban 2009, I don't know if he lives through it. Like, I don't know if his heart can handle it.
I don't think his players do. I mean,
that was one of those deals that you just never, ever, ever deal with that. That you never saw them, do that to themselves in games, and you never saw them play poorly on the lines of scrimmage. And I talked with Andy Staples about it. We got an interview coming with him tomorrow night on Bark After Dark.
Nice.
That won't be live. We're doing a tape Bark After Dark for tomorrow night. But one of the things he talked about, I asked him, I said, hey, man, what about these lines of scrimmage? And Andy was a walk-on lineman back at Florida in the day, and he said the problem with the lines of scrimmage are a lot of the kids that they used to get and stack talent with are going to Georgia. The competitions they used to have for playing time there, that it was so thick, it's just not there anymore. And that was an interesting point to me. And I just when I try not to think about, because I try not to think that the program you're at is just where it all happens. But at the end of the day, he had a point.
Sometimes it is. Y'all hit like and subscribe on the Georgia Show right here, DawgsHQ on YouTube. You won't want to miss Bark After Dark with Staples. That's going to be great stuff, always is. And we're back right here Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. DawgsHQ premium membership is still $1 for 1 month. Is that still living? Is that thing?
Oh, yeah.
Does it still have a pulse?
Oh, man.
As far as I'm pretty sure, Rusty, based on what we were told the other day, that's here to stay.
Join the club, man.
$1 for 1 month. Just come try it out.
Hell, $1.
Yeah, I think we
come
earned
try it
that
out.
tonight.
Send me a DM. I'll Venmo you $1.
Yeah, used to have to. There used to be 4 blow pops. Now it's just 1. Just skip 1 blow pop for your kid this week and find out if you like a month.
Y'all sign up for that. Don't miss it. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for keeping the comments hopping. A lot of new names and faces in there each week.
Thank you, guys.
Love to see
Thank
it. Keeps things interesting for sure. We'll see you back here tomorrow night.